Yeah, I'm excited to explore this variation of social meditation with you all, which at the moment I've just been thinking of as formless social meditation. And I think it's interesting. A lot can be said about formlessness, and I think needs to be said about what we mean in a meditative context, in a Buddhist framework, when we use that term. And it goes back, obviously, it goes back to the early tradition. And one of the main practice models, really that even predates Buddhism, are the jhanas, the meditative absorptions. And the traditional jhana system, which again predates the Buddha in India, it has 8 states that move from progressively more gross and obvious types of experience to more subtle and formless type of experience. And the first 4 of those 8 jhanas are called the Rupa Janas, or the form jhanas. And the last 4 are called the Arupa jhanas. And A is just a negation of Rupa, which is form, or sometimes it's translated in different ways, but means kind of like mind and form and matter, something like that. And so arupa means it's a state that's lacking in those characters. It lacks in matter or form. So it's a negation. So the arupa jhanas are the formless jhanas, lacking a particular form. But it's interesting because they still have names and they're still distinguished from each other. So they're obviously not completely formless. If by formless we mean that you can't describe anything about it. So the names of the arupa jhanas are the 5th jhana. The first of the formless jhanas is called infinite space. The second, or the 6th jhana, is called infinite consciousness. The 7th, or the 3rd of the formless jhanas, is called nothingness. And then the last one has a great name, neither perception nor yet non-perception. So these are, in my own experience as a meditator exploring formless jhanas, especially with Daniel Ingram and with Kenneth Folk, what I found is that they were progressively more subtle and difficult to describe states of consciousness. But I think here what we mean by formlessness is that what we normally think of as the structure or the form or the substance of the state is dropping away. It's falling away with each progressive move toward formlessness. And so formlessness, to me, it doesn't so much in this case describe like a final end result of being completely without form, although you could very much say that that's what is meant by nirvana, or emptiness. But rather it's kind of the movement in that direction, like toward the singularity. Like as we move toward the singularity of something we can't describe, then we progressively are dropping off all the things that we could describe, like space. Infinite space drops away between the 5th and the 6th jhanas. So it's like, oh, well, I thought space was like the most fundamental feature of experience. No, actually space can fall away. Oh, consciousness. Well, that must be fundamental, right? And a lot of traditions claim that consciousness is fundamental. And then here in this model, actually consciousness falls away, and then there's just nothing. Well, nothing, it must be, everything must be nothing. Well, actually, you could actually be aware of nothing in this case. There's an awareness of nothing. And so that nothing can also fall away. It can be seen as a structure, an experience, or form that falls away. So with social meditation, likewise, how I would describe formless social meditation, it's the process of gradually dropping away the form or the structure that we use with social meditation. It doesn't mean we're going to reach some sort of absolute formlessness, although I think there are moments when we do. But rather in the instructions, we're looking at the form that we could drop away, and we're looking at how we can gradually let that go. And the most obvious form that we're dropping in formless social meditation is related to what we speak aloud. So in formless social meditation, one thing that is consistent for this practice is that the what and how we meditate, like what it is that we say or do, especially with our voice, that's unspecified in this practice. So you can say anything in this practice. It's like freestyle noting if we weren't just limiting it to noting. It's totally open, so that you could note, you could offer a meta phrase, you could say, offer a question. You can really, there's no restriction on what you can say. What is meditation? That's an open question here. Now we have a lot of forms that we've done, and I think this is the other thing about formlessness. When you let go of a form, it doesn't mean you lose access to all the forms that you know. So here we still have access to any form that you know. You can share that, but what and how you meditate is completely up to you. It's not specified. There are some things that can be specified, though. And one that I think needs to be specified in most cases is like how long we're going to do this. How long are we going to drop the form? So we craft out a place in which we can experiment with letting go of form, and we say, okay, we're going to do this for this amount of time. So the length of the session can be specified. And I'd say unless you're in a very specific kind of context, like hanging out with a few friends, or I don't know the context where this would make sense, but there could be a way you could do this without length also. But I think in most cases, it makes sense to say, okay, we're going to do this for this much time. The other thing that can be specified is around when we practice aloud. So here, as you know, a lot of the practices can be done in either a sequential or a spontaneous order, meaning we either are taking turns or we're doing it as we feel moved. And here, I think one can still specify this as part of the instructions to kind of explore what it's like to be doing the practice in order or to be doing it as you feel moved. Now, if you do specify it, it's probably going to be the case that you specify, well, we're going to do this sequentially, we'll take turns. Now, what you do when it's your turn is up to you. But you can say, okay, we're going to take turns for this practice. You can also determine the group size that you'll be in or that people will be in as a facilitator of formless social meditation. Now, if you don't specify when people should note, just going back to that part, if you don't say this is sequential, then it defaults to spontaneous, right? So that's the important thing about the structure of social meditation. When we don't specify the order, it defaults to whatever happens. And usually what's going to happen is people are going to, it'll become spontaneous most of the time, unless everyone kind of gets the mental psychic message that we're going to take turns and just decides to spontaneously self-organize into an order. That could happen. I've not seen it. Maybe y'all will do that today, but defaults to spontaneous, to when you feel moved. That's kind of like, if it's not specified when, people will do it when they choose to. And then with the group size here too, either you can be in the whole group, which is the default. We default to being here where we are, or we can specify like a group size. And for the first round of this practice, I wanted to do that, to specify a little bit more structure, and then to gradually pull back on that structure so that we can see for ourselves what tweaking these different variables does to the formless part of the practice. And so you could also say that the most ultimate form of formless social meditation would be if what's said is left completely unspecified, how long isn't specified, when isn't specified, and there's no specifications on who should be with who and what groups. So that'd be like the most formless form of formless meditation I can imagine. And here we'll play with all those variables, except for the length. I'm not going to just go into a timeless practice with you all, because we do have constraints around our time. So anyway, that's a bit of an introduction to formless social meditation and what's meant by formlessness. We're letting go of the parts of the practice we can kind of set as a facilitator. There's this gradual movement of releasing those structures.